There are moments in life when everything around you seems to grow still. Time slows, people begin to drift away. The plans you made fall apart in silence, and you find yourself standing on the edge of something, but you don't know what. In those moments, many ask, is this the end? But the truth is far more mysterious. It's not the end, it's the beginning of a divine shift. And before that shift happens, God always sends a warning. But here's the thing, most people never recognize it. In ancient times, prophets would speak of the whispers of God that come before storms. These whispers are not loud, but they are unmistakable if you know how to listen. They arrive not as chaos, but as discomfort, not as lightning, but as silence. They're the final alerts that something immense is about to unfold in your life, and ignoring them can lead to unnecessary suffering. Recognizing them, however, can prepare you for a complete transformation of your destiny. This video is not just a message, it is a mirror. You will be shown how to recognize the divine signs that God sends before a major shift in your life. We will explore what these signs look like, why they often come disguised as loss or confusion, and how you can align yourself with divine timing rather than resist it. We'll walk through ancient wisdom, from biblical patterns to mystical teachings forgotten by time. You'll learn that God's final warnings are not punishments, they are invitations. Invitations to realign, to let go, and to prepare for something your current self may not yet understand. But first, we must unlearn what we think divine guidance looks like, because what's coming next isn't always wrapped in light. Sometimes, it comes cloaked in shadows. And those who see only the darkness will miss the doorway. Are you ready to see what others miss?
In every sacred tradition, there is an echo of a single, timeless pattern. Before transformation, there is disturbance. Before the light, there is shadow. And before the rebirth of the soul, there is a divine warning. Let us travel back to the ancient deserts, where prophets wandered in solitude. Think of Moses herding sheep in the wilderness after fleeing Egypt, stripped of status, identity, and hope. Before he could lead a nation to freedom, he had to encounter the burning bush, a mystical symbol of divine intervention. But that encounter didn't come in the palace. It came after 40 years of obscurity. His entire life fell apart before it was rebuilt. The warning came not with thunder, but with displacement. This is not unique to Moses. In nearly every spiritual narrative, from the Vedic sages meditating in forests to the desert monks of early Christianity, to the mystics of the Kabbalah, there is always a rupture before revelation. The warning signs are rarely loud proclamations. They appear as divine disruptions: the job loss, the unexpected betrayal, the strange inner restlessness that no pleasure can satisfy. The ancient Stoics taught of the sympatia, the deep interconnectedness of all events. Nothing happens in isolation. When your life begins to fall apart, it is not random. It is a sacred reconfiguration. The universe, or as the mystics would say, the divine mind, begins moving the pieces in unseen ways to prepare you for your next assignment. In Christian mysticism, this moment is referred to as the dark night of the soul. St. John of the Cross spoke of it as the phase where God removes all familiar comforts so that the soul may come to rely on divine truth rather than worldly illusions. To the untrained eye, this night looks like failure. But to the spiritually attuned, it is God's whisper. Prepare. Something is ending because something greater must begin. Even Jesus, before stepping into his ministry, was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. 40 days of fasting, silence, temptation, and a radical internal shift. Before the miracles, before the teachings, came the stripping away. So when you feel forgotten, abandoned, confused, consider this: you may not be abandoned at all. You may be in the prelude to purpose. In Eastern thought, particularly in Taoist philosophy, there's a teaching that says, before the spring, the earth must harden. Before enlightenment, the path disappears. The stillness, the silence, the delay, all are divine teachers in disguise. These spiritual traditions do not contradict each other, they harmonize. They all point to one profound truth. Major life shifts are not accidents. They are orchestrated. And before they arrive, God speaks. Not always in words, but in patterns. But here's the challenge. We've been trained to fear discomfort. We've been taught that loss is failure and that silence is rejection. This blindness prevents us from recognizing the divine choreography taking place behind the veil of normal life. To hear God's final warning, you must see as the ancients saw, not with your eyes, but with your spirit. Now that we've uncovered the ancient patterns, let us look more deeply at how these divine warnings manifest in the modern world. What forms do they take? And why do so many people misinterpret them?
If God were to warn you that your life was about to change forever, how would He do it? You might expect lightning in the sky, a prophetic dream, or a voice thundering from the clouds. But divine communication is rarely so dramatic. It is coded, hidden in ordinary moments, emotional undercurrents, and what most call coincidences. These are not mere signs. They are spiritual tremors, early waves of a coming spiritual earthquake. Here are the first forms these warnings often take. 1. The sudden drying of what once nourished you. Have you ever felt that something that once gave you joy suddenly drains you? A relationship, a career, a place, a routine. You try to revive it, to fix it, to stay loyal, but it feels hollow. This is not failure, it is a sign. In Scripture, Elijah once drank from a brook that God had provided during a famine. But one day, the brook dried up. Not because Elijah sinned, but because it was time to move. The drawing of your emotional or spiritual brook is not abandonment. It's a nudge. God removes the familiar to stir you toward the unknown. 2. Isolation from people and patterns. When a major shift is about to unfold, God often isolates you, not as punishment, but as preparation. Friends fade away, calls stop, opportunities vanish. You feel invisible. This isolation is sacred. Think of it as spiritual incubation. Just as a seed must be buried before it blooms, you too must undergo hidden transformation before public manifestation. This loneliness, though painful, clears distractions so that divine messages can find you directly. 3. A deep inner discomfort that has no clear source. This is perhaps the most mysterious of all, a subtle pressure in your spirit, a longing, a tightness in the soul. Nothing is wrong on the outside, yet something feels deeply unsettled. You may even say, I feel like something is coming, but I don't know what. This is the whisper beneath the noise. God is softening the soil of your spirit so that the new can be planted. The discomfort is not your enemy. It is the dissolving of old attachments, old roles, old illusions. Those who distract themselves from this feeling miss the divine invitation it carries. 4. Patterns start breaking. Synchronicities fall apart. The usual outcomes don't arrive. What once worked, now doesn't. Life seems to move against your usual rhythm. This is not chaos, it's sacred disruption, a recalibration. The map you used is being rewritten. And often, the first sign of that rewrite is resistance. In fact, when life resists your force, pause. It may be that heaven is redirecting your energy, not blocking you, but guiding you, away from what is familiar and toward what is necessary. 5. Dreams shift from comfort to symbolism. Many report a sudden change in their dreams during spiritual transition. What was once abstract or forgotten now becomes vivid. Repetitive symbols begin to appear. Doors, storms, floods, fire, climbing, falling, even death and rebirth. In the language of the Spirit, dreams are not entertainment,
They are encrypted scrolls. You are being spoken to in metaphors because the conscious mind is not yet ready to receive the message directly. Pay attention, record them, pray over them. The shift you feel during the day is often clarified in the symbols of night. Each of these signs, when seen through the lens of fear, looks like collapse. But through the lens of the sacred, they are signals. Like tremors before an eruption, they prepare the soul. And like the ancient priests who read the sky for science, you too must learn to read your life for divine patterns. In the next section, we will go deeper. Because once these early signs appear, the second phase of the warning begins. And that's when your decisions begin to matter most.
If the early signs are whispers, the second phase is a rumble. Once the initial spiritual tremors pass, once the brook dries up, the isolation deepens, the dreams grow stranger, God moves closer. Not in spectacle, but in pressure. His warning intensifies. This is the moment when many people either rise or retreat. And the difference between the two? Awareness. Let us now explore how the second stage of God's final warning unfolds. 6. A series of divine interruptions. Have you ever noticed how your plans begin to unravel precisely when you're trying to stay in control? Suddenly, things you could once predict begin to shift. Unexpected delays, last-minute cancellations, closed doors where there once was ease. This is not coincidence. This is interruption with purpose. God interrupts patterns that are no longer aligned with your calling. These divine interruptions are course corrections. You may cry out, "Why is this happening to me?" But the better question is, what is this saving me from? In the book of Acts, Paul is prevented twice by the Holy Spirit from going to preach in Asia. Why? Because God had a different assignment for him in Macedonia. The detour was the destination. The interference was the divine redirection. 7. The return of an old wound. Just before the shift begins, God often allows a past pain, pattern, or weakness to re-emerge, not to punish you, but to expose what cannot go with you into the next chapter. That unhealed trauma, that unresolved bitterness, that temptation you thought was gone. Why does this happen now? Because the foundation must be pure before elevation. God doesn't want your blessing built on brokenness, so He surfaces what you hid. Not to shame you, but to sanctify you. If you're feeling overwhelmed by something from your past right now, know this: it's not regression, it's refinement. 8. Spiritual messages begin to repeat everywhere. Have you ever seen the same Bible verse in different places? Heard the same phrase in sermons, conversations, even dreams? This is not random. This is called divine echoing. God often repeats a message when you're not listening the first time. Like Samuel, who heard the voice calling him in the night 3 times before he understood it was the Lord. Many of us ignore the initial call. But repetition is mercy. Heaven is patient. And if you've been hearing the same spiritual theme echoing across your life, it's time to stop asking for another sign and start responding to the one you've already received. 9. People begin leaving without explanation. One of the hardest warnings to accept is when people walk away, suddenly, or with tension you didn't see coming. A friend, a mentor, even family may withdraw. It feels personal. It feels like abandonment. But spiritually, it's pruning. Just as a gardener trims branches to make room for greater growth, God removes certain relationships because they are tied to the version of you that cannot survive the shift. Their chapter in your story is closing, not because they're evil, but because your soul is evolving beyond what they can carry. Do not chase what God is removing. Bless them, release them, and trust that divine subtraction always precedes
divine multiplication. 10. A moment of silence before the breakthrough. Perhaps the most overlooked sign of all, silence. Not the silence of apathy, but the silence of suspense. The space between the inhale and the exhale, when you've prayed, surrendered, obeyed, and nothing seems to happen. This is the sacred pause, the moment before the veil lifts. Jesus himself experienced this in Gethsemane. After praying in agony, heaven seemed quiet, but on the other side of that silence was resurrection. So if you're in a space where God feels quiet, where the heavens seem still, don't mistake the stillness for absence. It is the stillness before the door opens. These are the deeper signs of divine transition, and they are not punishments, they are invitations. To notice, to align, to prepare. Because once the final warning has passed, life will not return to what it was. The shift begins, and you will either be caught unprepared or step into your destiny equipped, clear, and awake. But how? In the next section, we'll explore the practical spiritual techniques to help you recognize, embrace, and prepare for these moments. Because knowing is not enough. You must now respond.
Knowledge opens the door. Practice walks you through it. Now that you've seen how God's final warnings manifest through disruption, silence, discomfort, and divine redirection, it's time to ask the deeper question. What do I do when these signs appear in my life? Here are practical spiritual techniques to help you not just survive the shift, but align with it. So you walk into the next season of your life with power, peace, and clarity. 1. The Watchman's Prayer. Early morning stillness. In ancient Israel, watchmen stood on the city walls before dawn, alert to signs of movement. Spiritually, this is your posture during transition. When the signs begin, rise early, even just 10 minutes before sunrise. Sit in silence. No music, no phone. Just listen. Ask, Lord, what are you saying beneath the noise? Journal whatever comes. It may be a phrase, a picture, or even just a feeling. This is how divine whispers are received, in stillness, not in chaos. This practice builds spiritual sensitivity. Over time, you'll begin to sense the direction of the shift before it arrives. 2. The Sacred Inventory, 3-day alignment practice. When patterns begin breaking and people start leaving, don't cling, reflect. Set aside 3 days to do a sacred inventory. Day 1. Review your relationships. Who energizes your spirit? Who drains it? Who do you feel you're outgrowing? Day 2. Examine your habits. Which ones bring peace? Which ones are tied to fear, distraction, or ego? Day 3. Revisit your assignments. Are you still walking the path God asked of you, or clinging to something safe? This isn't just self-help, it's spiritual positioning. Alignment precedes elevation. If you want to step into what's next, you must first release what was only meant for back then. 3. Fasting for clarity, not for answers. Biblical fasting wasn't just about sacrifice, it was about sharpening the spirit. During a warning phase, consider a short fast, 1 or 3 days, not necessarily from food, but from whatever numbs you. Social media, entertainment, toxic relationships, or even unnecessary talking. Don't fast to demand answers, fast to create space. In that space, your spiritual ears will sharpen, and what was once confusing will begin to feel like divine rhythm. 4. Create a spiritual symbol, anchoring the transition. In ancient times, people built altars or placed stones to remember divine encounters. Today, you can do this too, symbolically. Create a small altar,
Carry a stone, wear a ring, or draw a sigil. Let it mark this season. When you wear it, see it, or touch it, whisper, "I am not lost. I am shifting. I am becoming." This creates ritual memory, helping your mind and spirit remember that the chaos is not punishment, it's transformation. 5. Embrace the divine no. When something falls apart or doesn't work despite your best efforts, don't beg it to stay. Pause and pray. If this is your no, God, let me not resist it. The divine no is sometimes the greatest mercy. It saves you from lesser paths. It frees your hands to receive what's coming next. When you can bless closed doors, you open the ones heaven has ordained. These practices are not rituals for control. They are portals for surrender. Because God's warnings are never to instill fear. They are to prepare the soul for greater responsibility, deeper purpose, and clearer alignment with your divine assignment. As the signs appear, don't freeze, don't flee. Respond, align, awaken. The shift is already on its way. The only question is, will you be ready to receive it?
There is a sacred moment between the closing of one chapter and the birth of another. It is neither death nor life, neither past nor future. It is the in-between. And that's where God speaks the loudest, though few have the stillness to hear it. We've walked through ancient truths and modern tremors. We've uncovered how divine warnings manifest through discomfort, silence, loss, dreams, divine interruptions, and spiritual echoes. We've explored how what looks like collapse may in truth be divine construction, a careful reordering of your destiny. But now comes the moment of choice. These signs are not for curiosity, they are for action. You were not brought to this message by accident. Whether you're in the early tremors or the deep rumble of a life about to shift, you are being called to listen, to align, and to prepare. You do not need to fear the unknown. You only need to become intimate with the unseen hand that guides it. God does not warn to scare, He warns to spare, to awaken, to invite you into deeper alignment with His will and your purpose. So the next time you feel everything slowing down, when people disappear, plans fall apart, and silence falls like a curtain, don't panic. Instead, ask, what am I being prepared for? What is God clearing out of my life to make space for what's next? What sacred assignment awaits me beyond this disruption? Because the shift is not punishment, it is positioning. It is not loss, it is alignment. It is not chaos, it is a coded message from the throne of heaven. And if you can hear it, if you can respond, then what's coming next won't shake you. It will crown you. If this message stirred something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who may be in their own silent storm. And if you've experienced any of these signs, let us know in the comments below. Your story might be the confirmation someone else is desperately waiting for. Remember, God's warnings are never the end. They are always the beginning.